Hi, my name is Trang and this is the psychology behind my life. Right now, I'm a nursing student here at the U, but sometimes I wonder how I got in. With the college admission systems today, there's a lot of pressure to do well on standardized testing. Based on the graph of Patterson and Matern in 2013, based on my standardized testing, I'd be in the 56% range of getting A's and B's in college, whereas many of my fellow peers in the nursing program would be in the 75% range or higher. Connecting this to the classical theory of job performance, in the same lecture, the professor explained that having a higher cognitive ability will allow people to be more efficient in learning and understanding the material that is needed for the job. So this connects a lot with being to nursing, so being able to problem solve a lot better allows me to perform my job better. However, I would rely on trying to gain the same knowledge and understanding through experience. I would need more time to learn and gain the same knowledge to be as proficient in the same job as my fellow peers in the nursing program. So, along with standardized testing, there's a lot more to that than just looking at our scores. With that, they make us write essays to allow them to see our personalities and what we can bring to the universities. This is looking at our bio data. This is a big part of not only predicting job outcomes, like said in the lecture, but it's also true in admissions to like colleges. Colleges look at our bio data because they want to know if we're hard workers, if we will stay in college and pursue our degree that we earn there. Just like how in the lecture they talked about the academy principal that wanted newspaper boys for his school. Why? They wanted them because there's characteristics that he believed would be successful in his prestigious school. So, with average scores increasing for standardized testing, like AP scores, you now have to get a 4 or 5 and not just a 3 in order to have passed class. It shows how stressed out our generation is. I believe this reason is because of the Flynn Effect. In a lecture said by Professor DeYoung, so within each birth cohort, the IQ has been increasing compared to back in the early 90s compared to now. Today, everyone is getting an education and there's more discovered knowledge and ways to solve complex problems. For example, with past FRQs for AP testing, we use those FRQs to study from and learn from. A lot of FRQs can be a lot easier because they don't require as much of application of the knowledge learned. Whereas the AP test I took last year in 2019, my teacher said it was one of the hardest AP tests he's seen, but of course to him it was doable as long as we apply the knowledge that we've learned. I feel very pressured in this fast-paced society to keep up with my birth cohort. I have to work so much harder to receive the same scores and even positions. Despite a generation with more education and more knowledge, I believe that I do not have as smart of a brain as other people. As talked about in 9.1 in the textbook, the book talk says that intelligence consists of abilities to reason abstractly, acquire knowledge, learn to adapt to a new environment, and benefit from experience. These kinds of traits can be harder for me. I don't take information in as fast, and like taking a test, I have to read questions 2 or 3 times over and underline certain parts to make sure I understand it correctly. So sometimes it takes me longer to acquire knowledge and be able to reason my way through things. However, I believe what got me here now to where I am in the nursing program is what in chapter 9.5 referenced as grit. It's something where I am dedicated despite all the hardships and failures I've been through and having passion for what I'm doing. And I really do have passion into nursing and being able to get the education and get a job and make my parents proud. So with this grit, it takes a lot of memory techniques that I didn't realize I was using to help my short and long-term memory. When trying to rehearse information I am learning, I use a lot of mnemonic devices because it helps encode the material into my long-term memory. This is important for me as I want to be able to better retrieve the information when I'm taking tests and exams. I commonly use keyword methods or chunking. This is helpful with learning new material because it gives me meaning and I am able to apply it to myself and remember it better. For example, with chunking, people always ask me, how do I always so easily remember the Wi-Fi passwords? And that's very helpful because I use chunking, giving meaning to each part or section like talked about in the lecture by Professor Fletcher, giving it meaning like race times or dates and other stuff to help me see patterns in the Wi-Fi codes. However, over time when I have to learn material for the next test, I start to forget the old information. Like for example with my chemistry test. The first two chapters were about components of the periodic table, like metal and nonmetals, and then we learned about properties and balancing equations, and then at the end we learned about acids and bases. Then when it came to review questions about the first couple chapters, I didn't really remember them because I was so focused on studying the new material that I started to forget about the old material. This is called retroactive interference, which is talked about in 7.1 in the textbook. This interference is different from something also known as decay. Decay is more of information over time that is forgotten. It's not because of new information that's coming in, but the material fades away over time. So, with studying for final exams, it can be really scary because you can't always remember everything that you've learned, especially in history classes or sometimes even in this psych class. A lot of times when I'm taking the exam, the questions can have answers like all of the above. And my brain always believes that that's the right answer because a lot of times when I take exams, that seems to always be the right answer. So as I'm looking through the answer choices, I start to make myself believe that all those answer choices are right. Even sometimes when they switch just one word or some little part, it's hard to realize because I just want to choose all the above. It's just the easier option to choose from. And a lot of times this is because I'm in a mental set, because then I only think of one way to solve this problem and not any other way to find the right answer. However, for many other questions, I have to use a lot of things like inductive reasoning. The first thing to do is understand and figure out what they're asking. What do they want you to do? Here, I can end up realizing that this is using division because there's 80 crayons and you're putting them in 10 boxes, so I just use division. Maybe this is because we have a bias and I know this is a math question and maybe I'm learning about division. No one told me the answer, but I was able to draw a general conclusion and work out this example. How else can I not be so nervous in final exams? It's all about how I study. So a lot of times when I study, it's a lot of trial and error to figure out what type of studying is best for each class. Like sometimes for language classes, using note cards can be really great. And for math classes, it's just doing a bunch of examples and trying to figure it out. This trial and error studying goes with the law of effect that was talked about in 6.2 of the textbook. So when I'm studying, I've tried using note cards or making Quizlets or just reading over my notes. And with trial and error, when I was using Quizlet, I found that helped me get a good grade. And so that made me want to start using Quizlet more, knowing that that it's the most efficient way of studying for me. So this is kind of like the law of effect because the stimulus using the study method of Quizlet allowed me to get a good grade, the response, and knowing that I got a good grade out of using Quizlet, I'm going to start using Quizlet more. However, there are things that do not help me study. So, biggest thing I think all students can agree on is our handy phones. Phones can be very distracting, and this is a problem because phones give us positive reinforcement when we're on our phones. When I'm sitting there just studying and doing my work and having my phone next to me, I hear a ding from the notification, and we associate with someone that good. It's maybe a funny video our friends are sending us or a text from our parents. So we start to change our voluntary behavior because we want to go on our phones because we know something's good out of it instead of ignoring it and just trying to study. One thing that people don't realize is a distraction and really stops us from being able to go about our day is our sleep schedules. I had this problem in my senior year of high school, and I know a lot of other people probably can relate to this too. It really messed up my circadian rhythm, which really messed up how alert and aware I was throughout the day. My first 3 years of high school, I had a schedule I went with every day, sleeping around 11 to 10 at night and waking up at 6 to get ready for school. And even on the weekends, I would always still wake up around 6 or 7 because my body was so used to that. In those 3 years, I never understood why my sister was always sleep deprived, always went to bed so late. I was questioning how could someone have that much homework and she would not even be able to wake up to her alarms because she was just so tired. That was until my senior year, I had the same problems. I put so much on my plate with school, work, college classes, getting my nursing assistant certification. I started to get out of my rhythm. I started to have a dysregulated circadian rhythm, which caused me to be less alert and aware of what I was doing and what was around me. I'd be so tired from my lack of sleep that I would sleepwalk to my room or downstairs to the living room and fall asleep on the couch or wherever without even knowing it. My alarm would go off for a long time until my parents would have to walk out of their room to turn it off for me. Sleep is important for college students today, and there's such a stereotype of having to stay up late and procrastinate on the work, but really that does not need to happen, and people need to make sure that they get the sleep because our bodies replenish itself in the night, and it helps us to be more productive the next day. With sleep, another problem comes from that, like stimulants that students use in order to stay away from the lack of sleep they have. There are a lot of very harmful ones out there, but the biggest one is coffee. This stimulant a lot of people use increases their arousal, alertness, and energy for the day, and that's what they need. And so, like in the lecture, it is a lifesaver. This is a lifesaver for many people to be able to stay awake for classes, for school, and for work even. But really, it can be a curse because a lot of people start to depend on this a lot more, which is not good. People have to wake up in the day and have to have a cup in the morning in order to not have a headache and to be more awake, which can be a problem when they become more addicted to it. Overall, psychology can be seen in a lot of ways throughout our lives, and it can help us understand how and why things work. We start to be more aware of what we are doing, which can help us improve our lifestyles.